Thank you. And the recording is happening because we will be sending the link out to you guys. So what I would like for you all to do is, if you have the opportunity to open up a browser while you're on your computer right now on another screen, open up your browser and jump over to LinkedIn. And when LinkedIn comes up, I always say the easiest way for me to get there is I see my picture and I click on it. Click on your picture. And then when you click on your picture, you'll up in the search bar is your LinkedIn URL. There are other ways to get it, but that's one of the ways. And I drop those instructions in the chat. And then just like Patricia and Malcolm did here, Tran did it also, drop your link in the chat. And then don't stop there. A lot of people just go, here you go, everyone connect with me. Don't stop there. You actually go back and click, scroll down and click on the URLs and connect with people. Because again, we have 34 people on the call right now that you can at least connect with. And maybe you can have a conversation with. Maybe you can be like, hey, I'm going to an interview. Can I practice a couple things with you? Because today, as we go through interviewing, because we're virtual, you're not going to have the one-on-one like practice session that you would have if you were in person. So what I would love to see you do is connect with each other and jump off into a phone call and do a practice session with each other. So great, you guys, this is awesome. Thank you for dropping in your LinkedIn URLs. Make sure you're clicking on them and connecting with each other. And when you connect, it's a really good idea in the message to say, hey, I was on the interview workshop today. That way you remember, if you go back to that person, how you met. And I love when people do that to me, because then if something comes up and I need to talk to them later, I can look to see how we know each other. I actually just did that yesterday, you guys. So I was at, real sidetrack story, I was at Pilates yesterday afternoon, and I was getting ready, getting settled, and this lady runs up to me and she's like, Jessica, hi, it's so great to see you. And I had no idea who she was. And she gives me this big hug. It's like we were best friends. And I was like, oh my gosh, who was that? So, you know, she told me her name. She reminded me, thank goodness I didn't have to at least ask for that. So I got, after Pilates, I'm sitting in my car and I jumped on LinkedIn. I'm like, how do I know her? And I jumped on, Facebook and Instagram, and, I'm like, and she had written me a note in LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, that's how. And so then I actually messaged her and I'm like, I'm so sorry if I caught off guard and, was able to talk to her. But now that's somebody I'll never forget, right? Like okay, now I'll never forget who that person is. But so connect on LinkedIn. It's really, really important. And put a note in there when you connect with people. And then again, I'm going to encourage you to meet offline for a half hour and network, but practice. So let's go. And I also want to tell you one more thing, that I am sitting here working with you guys today and never had intended to do this as a job, ever. I was on that, I was at Intel for 10 years. So I was on that corporate, the corporate climb, the corporate ladder. And 10 years. Oh, in fact, when I walked in the door when I was 24 years old, how many of you have this story? I walked in the door when I was 24 years old and I was like, I am going to retire here. Day one, 24 years old. 10 years later, Intel said, no, you're not. And my world kind of was like, what? Everything I've ever done was invested in this company. It was invested here. I traveled the world, talked to people all over the place for my job, and I was always Intel Blue. Jessica Intel Blue. I was never Jessica Pierce. When I left that company, I had to figure out who I was. I was no longer this corporate girl that was on that track. And so I don't know if that's what you're going through right now, but sometimes it's like, who am I? I gotta figure this out. And not only who am I, but what do I want to do next? What do I want to do? What do I care about? What do I want to do next? And so as you're figuring that out, and then when you go into these interviews to talk to people, you get to be you. yourself. You're not representing a company. You're representing you. And the branding piece of that is really important. We're not going to go into a ton of branding today, but just really understanding who you are. So the next thing, I know I'm having you guys do all this in the chat because I want you to keep engaging. I would love for you to also tell me right now in the chat, what is one of the most difficult job obstacles you are dealing with now? Is it you can't figure out the right resume? You're not getting answers on your when you apply, you're not getting responses. Is it you're getting to an interview, but you're never getting to the next interview? Are you getting to final interviews, but can't figure out why you can't land it? Like, what is the deal? What do you feel like right now you are struggling with the most? Yeah. Oh, wow. Yep. So, yeah, getting the initial interview, great. And Jesse, if you have not attended the resume workshop that Lori Norris does, you must attend that. She's phenomenal and will help understand that. But networking is really the name of the game. And we're going to talk networking a little bit. Oh yeah, Kimberly, you'll have to reach out to LinkedIn Corporate. That's really a difficult one. Just start really beefing up the one you can get into. And she has 2 LinkedIn profiles. No responses, confidence, overqualified and underqualified. What? Right. It's so frustrating. Interviews, foot in the door, getting interviews. Yeah. No. Oh my gosh. So much of this, you guys, can be answered with, and so many people hate the word, with networking. So much of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about it today. If you were in my workshop yesterday about job search essentials, we're going to have for the next probably about 45 minutes, you're going to see information you saw from yesterday. And then it'll all be new from there. But because I have to set the baseline for interviewing, and it comes with basically getting your foot in the door. How do you do that? How do you make that happen? So we'll talk about that. So thank you for sharing that, you guys. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the hiring process and the life cycle of an interview. And then we'll do some preparing, researching for interviews. And the meat of this time today is going to be, how do you craft your narrative, craft your stories, craft and prepare your responses when you don't know the questions? That's what we're going to spend a lot of our time on today. Because if you go into an interview knowing your answers, because you know your stories, you know the successes you've had at work, you know what you've done, and you want to use your best stuff in your answers. If you go in knowing your answers, it changes the game. And then it becomes you instead of a memorized you. It becomes you. And the interview, it changes the whole thing. And you're like, how do you do that? I'm gonna walk you through that. And it's not as hard as you think. And so then we'll talk about at the interview and post-interview strategies. What to do after the interview, some of the things to think about. Okay, so I do see a couple names here that were here from yesterday. So this part, this next section, you heard yesterday, but it is not bad to hear it again. It is not bad to hear it again. But then after this initial part, it will be new stuff, okay? And it'll be the deep dive. So, but I gotta lay out the foundation, all right? So the foundation here is the actual process, the hiring process. I saw many of you over here say, I can't get the interview. I can't get past the recruiter. They're not calling me back. What's going on? So that's what we're talking about, the hiring process. So there are 3 components that really make up the part of how a culture match. So a culture match being like, this is the candidate we want for the job. They're the right person. There are 3 components. And there's the competency. Do you have the skills to do the job? There's the character. Like, are you the right behavioral style? Are you a match for our company that way? Do you care what we care about? And then there's the chemistry piece. Like, do we like you? And unfortunately, or fortunately, that is so important. People only hire people they like. That's how it is. And so we'll talk about what that means, even if I just really made you mad there. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. So the recruitment process is, can look really, I just want to make sure I have the right, slide up here, can look really frustrating and confusing. And, because there's a lot of steps. And so this is not every recruitment process. This is, the recruitment process in general. But the importance is, I don't care, like the steps are not as important as you understanding there's a lot of steps typically. Very few times are you going to submit your resume, get a phone call, do an interview, and then get a job offer the next day. It's just not how it happens. And so what I want you to understand is it's very difficult to get through the whole thing, and it takes time, and you might not hear back for a couple weeks, and that's frustrating. But if you kind of switch your mindset, your strategy on how you're going after this, you can cut a lot of the steps out, and it actually shortens the time frame. You can kind of go from finding the job to being shortlisted and going in for that one interview if you're setting up your strategy the right way. And here's how you do that. First of all, well, the three components that I talked about, the competency, character, and chemistry, we're going to dive into those right now. So when you're thinking, okay, competency is, do I have the skills to do this job? And the main place you can figure that out is from the job description. You may not have somebody at the company you're talking, yet, but this is the base, right? This is the baseline of what are they looking for? So you're going to look on this, the job description, and here's where you're going to pull out, okay, do I have this? Am I able to do this? Can I do this? Am I experienced here? And the number is about 80%. If you're about 80%, yeah, I think I can, I'm experienced enough to do this. I think I can do this. Then if it's about 80%, then it is worth spending the time and the resources to apply for this job. Now, excuse me 1 second. I just want to, okay. Because the reason I say that is because most people will apply for a whole bunch of jobs in one day. And the reality is, if you're doing that and applying for a whole bunch of jobs in one day, there is no way possible that you are spending the dedicated resource, time, and energy to appropriately apply for the job. It's just not possible. Because when you apply for the job, there are steps you need to take to make sure that you get your resume looked at, that you get fast-tracked, that people respond to your application and your resume. And so the first place you got to go is you got to look at the job description, of course, to figure out if you have the skills, if you have the experience and the competency to do so. And then if you do, again, about 80%, then you can start moving forward with the process. So let's take a look at the skills part. When you're looking at a job description, or you talk to somebody, you're networking with somebody and they say they have a job coming up, and you ask, what are they looking for? These are some of the things that they're looking for. You got to look at the job requirements. You got to look at those, right? Do I have the main pieces of the job requirements at about an 80% or more? The job requirements, usually it's most of the time listed from most important skill or job requirement down. And so take a look at those most important ones, those ones at the top, and you're like, okay, I got that. Look at those and you're like, okay, yes, I'm qualified from the job requirements. Do I have the technical capabilities? Is there software? Is there manufacturing processes? What are the technical capabilities of this job? Do I need to fix stuff? Have I done that before? Can I do that? Last night I was at an event at, what's it called? Aviation Institute of Mechanics, maybe even something like that. And it's a beautiful new facility in Phoenix. And what this school does, it's a trade school, it's a technical school. What this school does is trains people to fix airplanes. And so you walk into this, it's a hangar and it's amazing, but all over they have airplanes everywhere, everywhere. But then they have all of these stations or areas where students are on there, writing on whiteboards, but then they have all of their handyman stuff there, tools. It's not handyman, it's tools. It's all of the resources there. And they're fixing problems on these planes every day, right? To learn. That's like technical capabilities. Do you have the abilities? These students are going to graduate with jobs waiting. I mean, this school has United, American, Delta paying them to get students to go through this training because the demand is so high. They need so many people. And so, these students, they're looking at their job requirements or their technical capabilities are their top thing. So do you have the technical capabilities? Do you have the leadership that they're asking for? What are the leadership skills? What do they ask for? Do they ask for you to develop teams? Do they ask for you to mentor? What are the leadership skills? Maybe you think maybe there's none or it doesn't say any on there. But usually they're looking for leadership in some capacity, even if it's on your own, and doing your own thing, but you have to influence up. So there's always some type of leadership skills you want to look for. Now, experience, of course, experience. So you have skills, you have experience. What are your jobs that you've had? And on your resume, we're not going to go into this today, but on your resume, you do want to list your jobs and you want to list your ones most current down. Don't use a functional resume or anything like that. This is called a, oh my gosh, I just lost the word. Anyway, you're going to list your most recent job down. Okay. And put your accomplishments right in there for those jobs. And so it can be part-time jobs, full-time jobs, contract positions, any kind of job that you have done, especially any that are relevant to the position you're applying for. That's why sometimes, or most times, you have to update your resume when you're applying for the job. You look at the job description and then you update your resume with the most relevant information as you're applying for that job. So when that resume goes through the applicant tracking software or gets in front of the recruiter's eyes, they can go, oh yeah, that person has this experience. And actually at this event I was at last night, I got to talking to the lady that had planned the whole event. And she had flown in some different vendors and it was a black tie event. So it was really, really amazing. And there was a band, there was actually 2 bands, and they had this whole theme where you were going like from in one area, one room of the hangar was like West Coast. It was LA set up like that. Then you went into the middle room, which is where dinner was served. And that was like the Midwest, like you were flying over, And then on the other side, you ended up on the East Coast and there was a band in there and it had a whole New York theme. Okay. And so I got to talking to this lady and she said, I asked her, what she does. And I was doing networking, just like you all should be doing networking. I was asking her what she does. And she's like, oh, I'm here. I'm the one that planned this event. And I'm like, oh my gosh, amazing. And so we got to talking to that. I said, well, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And so I was connected with her and she's like, well, I'm not with this company anymore. I'm with a different company. They merged and then I got moved over to this position. And so she said, so this isn't my job anymore. I said, well, because I said, you're an amazing event planner. This was well laid out. And she's like, that's not really what I do. I just kind of picked this up and because I care about this company and I love to sometimes be creative and do this stuff. So this wasn't even her job. And she had done this phenomenal thing. But I tell you what, if she is applying for a marketing job or an event planner job in the future, she is going to put this on her resume, even if it's not her job. So whatever, because she did such a phenomenal job. And she even said something like, she told me in this hangar, there's no tables and chairs in a hangar. But there was all these comfy couches all over the place, and this kind of had made little spaces and for people to talk, and as the music was playing, but kind of be more intimate so you could hear each other. And she goes, you know what? All this furniture I got off of Facebook Marketplace. That couch was $20. That one was $15. So we're at this black tie event. She's like telling me how much she spent on Facebook Marketplace. That's awesome. I mean, think about that right there, that story that she's telling me, she could for sure use in an interview, because she had a budget. She had to figure out how to be creative. She's out of town. She does not live here. And she had to have results. All of that. She could tell that story in an interview without even having to think about it, because it was so in her. It's what she had done. So that's what I'm going to get your brains to start thinking about. What are some of the great things you've done in your job, that in your past jobs, or whether it was a full-time job, a contract job, part-time job, a volunteer position, whatever it was that you've done that you can use in your interview, that you don't have to memorize, that So these could be volunteer experiences as well, can be any internships, externships, apprenticeships, any kind of work you have done counts, whether it was paid or not. And I want you thinking about that, because you can update your resume and include those things, especially if it applies, but it definitely can be utilized during an interview. And then lastly, are you a match on the education side? There has been a huge shift in education where in the last, 5 years or so, 10 years, where a lot of people, instead of college degrees, are moving over into doing certifications or doing some kind of training or getting experience and going right into the workforce instead of going to a four-year college. Now, four-year colleges are still out there and lots of people do them, but it's definitely not at the rate it used to be. And so think about the job you want. What education does it really require, and do you have it? And if the answer is yes, you have it, awesome. If it's like, maybe kind of, or I really want to do this thing over here and I don't quite have that thing, then is it possible you could go get certified through a couple weeks of training? Or you can jump on online program and get the training that you need. Whatever that is, look, if you're missing something to get where you want to go, now is the time to do it. Don't lose time because you're looking for a job. You do need to spend that time looking for a job, but go after the training that you need right now. And again, not all, many jobs no longer require a four-year degree. So if you don't have a degree, that's okay. You got to kind of let that go. I remember, and this was many years ago when degrees were required, but I helped when I was at Intel. I used to refer a lot of my friends because I had just graduated with my MBA and they were hiring, at that time, MBA students. And so I would refer a lot of my friends. I was a single mom at the time. And so I kind of made it a second income, because every time you referred somebody, there was like a $2,000 bonus. And so, it was a nice little extra income for me. So my friend started there. She actually started as an admin. She was there for, I think she was there 17 years. And she went from an admin, and she was an engineering manager when she left. No degree. She worked her way up. She did the things she needed to do. She went and got trainings. She went and got a certification here. She did what she needed to do to get the next job, and she loved it. And so whatever it is, whatever that gap is, really take it into account and think, I should really go spend some training there. So that's the competence side. I'm just going to jump over here real quick. And okay, some questions about the resume. I'll have to take that offline, Matt, about the positions at Intel, but yes, I can answer that later. Okay, the question about listing dates on a resume, 10 to 15 years-ish. I'm not going to go into this real deep because we don't have the time, but if you are 10 to 15 years is the guideline. But if you're applying for a job that matches or shows you're capable, but it was from a long time ago, then on the bottom of your resume, you can put additional experience and you can put the jobs. You don't have to put the years. You can just put like, you were a program director at whoever, Intel, because I used Intel, but you can put that, but you don't have to list it under your regular experience, because that does get into some of the age issues where people have a preconceived notion about what you can do or cannot do based on your age. And yeah, it's illegal. Yes, it still happens. We know that, but it goes both ways. It goes, hey, some people are like, I'm not getting talked to because I'm over this certain age. And some people are like, I'm not getting talked to because I'm too young. I mean, it's all over the place. People are people. They look at this resume and they make a preconceived notion about it. So we want to do everything we can to get rid of that. That's why you don't want to put the years on, but you do want to show that you're capable. And so of that job, so you can list it below. Okay, there you go. All right, so moving on to character. Character is the part of this that's like, hey, am I a match for the company based on who the company is? So for example, are you somebody who is very creative and likes to kind of take a risk maybe a little bit and be entrepreneurial, but you don't really want to run your own business all the time? Maybe you have a side gig or two, but you want a job too. So then you have a certain kind of company, one that maybe makes decisions quicker, that does things faster. Or are you like, I really like some kind of stability. I want to know what's coming. I want to know if I want a promotion, what it takes to get there, how long, what education I need, what I need to do. And I want it very clear. Okay, then maybe you're looking at maybe something like a government position. You're going to know your retirement and benefits and exactly how long. I mean, I went to this event with my friend last night, and she's her husband's a police officer, and he started when he was 25, I think, 20, between there somewhere. Anyway, he's not even 50, and he's going to retire next year. But I've known them for 9 years, and they have been counting down the days. And he's great. He's not even on the road anymore. He's a trainer. He actually really likes his job, but he's ready to go do other things. But they have been counting down the days, and they're so grateful for this position. And he's loved it for the most part. There are pieces, right? But that is, he wanted that. He wanted to know he has a pension, to know he has benefits. He would never want to work for a entrepreneurial driven company that he doesn't know what's going to happen next. So those are kind of the extremes, right? And then there's a whole bunch in the middle. And so you got to kind of think, what kind of company do I want to work for? When I was 24 and I just moved to Arizona, I was like, first thing I thought was, I want to go to the staffing company that hires for Intel and Motorola, because those were the only two companies I wanted to work for. Again, I was 24, didn't really know what I didn't know, but that was what my brain said. I want to go work. So I went to the staffing company and I said, do you hire for Intel and do you hire for Motorola? And they said, yes. And I go, great. And they go, well, we also hire for hundreds of other companies. I'm like, no, I want to work for Intel or Motorola. I know that's what I want to do, and that's who I want to work for. They're like, well, we don't have any job opportunities. I'm like, all right, call me when you do. Kind of like this, I guess, pompous 24-year-old. It's like, I know everything. And so whatever, it worked out, because the next day they called me and they're like, guess what? We have an opportunity in Intel. I'm like, great. So they sent me over and I ended up getting that contract job, which turned into a full-time job. But like, I knew who I wanted to work for. So do you know what kind of company you want to work for? And there are a couple of different ways you can find out and figure out. First of all, you got to know you. What are your behavior traits? What do you do well? Are you the, fast-moving, risk-taking entrepreneurial type? Are you the more risk adverse, kind of committed, same kind of day, every day-ish kind of role? Like, what kind of work do you do best in? what kind of behaviors? So there are just some words on the screen to kind of get your brain going. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is take something like a DISC assessment, or take something like predictive index, or drop in the chat any behavior assessments you've taken. And so people can kind of get ideas. If you've taken some assessments at work, if you've taken some assessments through volunteering. I know Arizona at Work has, I believe on their website, Leroy, I don't know if you want to drop anything, but Arizona Job Connection, AJC, there's built-in assessments there too. You can jump on there and take them, but we do also offer the DISC for free. And so we're going to provide that link as we go. But yeah, if you've ever taken a DISC, any kind of assessment, drop that in the chat so we can see which ones are out there. Predictive index, Myers-Briggs, there are so many, you guys. And you just need one or two to kind of go, oh, these are the kind of behaviors. Yes, this is what I'm good at. This person that we're looking at is, outgoing, optimistic, probably pretty driven, likes people, that kind of stuff. Oh, thank you, Leroy. So check out what he just posted in the chat. And there is some good stuff there. That's Onet's one. So take a look there. There are some assessments built into that. And again, when we send out our email afterwards, we're going to give you guys a list of some as well, and free ones that are available to you. So take some time getting to know and really understanding what are my behavior traits, my natural things. This person here, if this actually was, I pulled this example because I was helping this person with landing a job. We were doing some job search stuff. And so I asked her to take this because just so I could kind of help her out better and get to know her a little bit. And when I looked at her resume and I compared it to the DISC assessment, I said she had been an accountant for like almost 20 years. And I looked at this and I just said, how do you like accounting? And she, you could audibly hear this. She took this deep breath. She was like, I hate accounting. And I was like, okay. Well, your DISC tells me that that's probably not the role for you. And it was like the weight of the world had just come off of her shoulders. She had been doing this for 20 years, going into the office, doing her job, being a good accountant. And I said, why did you choose accounting? And she said, I chose accounting because, get this, my dad said it was a good and stable career when I was going to college. I was like, okay. And she goes, but I cannot do it anymore. And I said, okay, well, what we're going to do then is now we have the information and we're going to figure out how to move you forward. And what we did is I started just asking questions like, what do you actually like to do? What are some of the things in the 20 years you've been doing accounting? You've liked some of the stuff, is that right? And she said, oh yeah. And so she's kind of telling me what she's interested in. She loved leading teams. There were some times she did some implementations for some accounting software in her company. She loved that because she was engaging with people and she was able to pull these teams together. Makes total sense. Look at her DISC assessment. That very persuasive high, the yellow, that's the people one. That's high people engagement, talking to people. No wonder she loved that. So what we did is we just took her resume and just tweaked it for more of a project management implementation specialist in finance. And she landed that type of job and she's killing it. She loves her job. That's all she had to do was pivot. And so remember, in the chat, yes, you're telling your kids stable job, but that's so hard because there's not really a stable job. We are going, the market changes, things change. And if you or your kids can think, where are my strengths and my values? And then what kind of company do I want to work for with those? And that's how you become stable, because then you know you, and you can do anything that you want to do. If you're going through a job change, a job transition, then you're still you. You're not dialed in just to a company. Even if you're with a company for 20 years, but you know you, then it's all, you can sell you can find out something else that works for you. But if you're locked into that company because it's a stable job, the company does not define you, you do. So that's why you want to look at these assessments and go, okay, on the disc, it tells you what's my ideal environment. What kind of value do I have? And you can use these. You can use these, put them on your resume, but it also can help you target the type of job you want. So that's the character trait section, and also the top 10 skills that companies are looking for right now. So many of you on the call have these skills. Some of you have all of them. Some of you are like, oh, there's a couple I could be doing better at. So these are the top 10 skills that a company is looking for. And what are those ones that you can highlight on your resume? Even especially if they're written down on the job description. But what are the ones that you can highlight on your resume, and which are the ones that you need a little bit of work on? So there's kind of 2 or 3 that I would say I hear over and over and over again from employers, even though these are top 10. There are 2 or 3 I hear over and over. Communication, hands down, absolutely, is the most important one. So anyway, you can show your communication skills through following up, and networking, sending an email, talking to them, making sure your resume is, solid. Absolutely. The other thing is this kind of Marie, oh my gosh, why am I losing my words today? Forneo, I think is her name. But she has a brand for herself that's everything is figure outable. Everything is figure outable. And what that means is you can figure anything out if you have, if you're able to problem solve, if you are able to take initiative, if you're able to be a leader and, make decisions, like you're self-motivated. So like it takes a whole bunch of those and lumps them together. Like, think about that. Are you somebody who can figure things out without having to depend on other people? Then you need to feature that in your interviews in some capacity. All right. So the recommendation on listing soft skills, and we're transitioning the word. I keep hearing more essential skills is the title. You don't really list them anywhere on your resume. What you do is you incorporate them into your resume. There's a difference. The listing is just like in the skills section, you can list, and fine, you can list. But it's not impactful. But in your accomplishment statements that falls under your work experience, you incorporate these skills. So if you're talking about leading a team, you talk about how you had to coordinate and communicate with 10 team members on how, meeting times and how to make this project happen or whatever it was. But that's incorporating a communication skill. Or the company had this problem and you took leadership of it and went to figure it out. And then you pulled people together, or you went and found this gap, and you found this gap, saved the company this much money because you took initiative to solve that problem. That incorporates a whole bunch of these skills into one statement, and you don't have to list the skills. Listing the skills does nothing, but incorporating the skills shows that you've actually done something. So, okay, I've got to keep moving, guys. And then I'm going to show you in just a minute where you can find out and figure out some of this, where you can get some of this stuff at, how you can figure out if the company is of high a character match, and it goes with the chemistry part. So I'm going to lump them together. So let's jump into the chemistry part. Here's the deal. And I said it right at the get-go. People hire people they like. Write it down. People hire people they like. It's probably one of the most frustrating things I say to people. They're like, ugh, I hate that you say that. It's the truth. People hire people they like. Think about it. If you go to hire somebody and you know you're going to spend 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, whatever, you're going to spend a lot of time with this person, more time than you're going to spend with your spouse, more time than you're going to spend with your kids, you're going to spend with this person. And they're going to be on your cell phone and they're going to text you and you're going to have to answer them and they're going to have to answer you. And you're going to be in meetings and they're going to have to work with you. They're going to have to back you, or maybe they're not going to back you. People hire people they like because we want to be around people that we connect with, that we understand, that we know has our back. That I remember this one time I was in this meeting and it was kind of, this technology wasn't real solid yet, but it was, I don't even remember. I think WebEx is what we were on, but we were on a WebEx meeting with people around. Our team was all over the world at this time. And I remember because the technology wasn't real new, wasn't real good yet, people still were real good at it. And so I'm presenting something, I don't know, I can't remember what, a project update. I think we each had to do our project update. So I'm presenting this project update. And in the little message thing, I got this message that said something like, Jessica thinks she's like everything, that anyone cares what she's saying. I mean, it was not nice. And I don't know if you've ever sent something like that or you've received something like that, but you're like, wow, dang, you know? And so I responded. Of course I did, because I don't mind having hard conversations. And I was like, hey, Jill, I don't think you meant to send this to me. You know, so she called me right after the meeting, apologized, said that was uncalled for, whatever. We worked it out. But we did not like working with each other. It just, we just butt heads. It was just how it is. I think we were both younger and we were both kind of vying for that lead position. And so it was just kind of like that. And I know you all have worked with somebody that you're like, I know somebody's popping in your head right now, like that person you worked with, that every time they sent you an email, or when you open your computer in the morning and you see that email, you're like, oh, I don't even want to open that email. Like, we all have that person, right? We hire people we like. We hire people we like because we work with them so much. That's my point. So this interview cycle does happen, but if you don't get that like likability factor, the connection, then you're not going to move on in the interview process. And so let's talk about a little bit how, you know, before we go that, how you become that, you know, you get that likability factor. I'm going to show you some tips in just a minute, but you really, really, really need to do the research, understand the company, and make sure that when you walk in there, that you are the kind of person that would be a fit at the company, and that you're only applying for jobs that are a fit for you. If you spend the time doing the research, figuring out the list of companies you're a match for, it is going to flip your job search upside down. So instead of apply, I'm going to apply for 40 jobs today. I'm not going to get off my computer until I find and apply for 40 jobs. So you're just online, apply. Stop doing that. Instead, what you're going to do, I hope, is you're going to this week, what day are we on? Wednesday. This week, by Friday, just do a ton of research and come up with 20 companies that you want to work for. 20 companies that you want to work for. I hope some of you have already done that. But if you haven't, come up with a list of 20 companies you want to work for. And that means going and doing the research, going and figuring out, okay, what kind of companies do I want to work for? What kind of character traits do they have? What kind? And that's the kind of company I want to work for, and put them on your list. Because then there's more steps, but that's like the start of flipping your interviews upside down. And I'll come back to that. So let's talk about the research and how you figure that out. Because if you go into an interview and you know this stuff, you know about them, you research them, you're going to go in just like when I was 24 and I didn't even know really what I was doing. But when they interviewed me and they said, you know, why do you want this position? I'm like, Intel's my number one option. This is where I want to work. I moved here a couple months ago. And when I started looking around for jobs, I was like, this is the company I want to work for because of this, and this. I had multiple reasons. I didn't have to make them up. They weren't fake. They were like, at the time, my fiance works here. He's in the fab. And I know, you know, how you've treated him as an employee. I see the leadership capabilities. Like, I'm young and I'm still finishing my degree, but I see what you guys do with people and how you allow career pathways to happen. You know, and I'm driven. I want to be able to make an impact. Like, I knew it without I didn't have to even practice anything that way. Same for you. If you make that list of 20 companies and you get that call and it's like, hey, we'd like to interview you. It's that moment where you're like, okay, great. When, you know, you're all professional. Great. Yeah. Awesome. When is it? Yeah. Oh, I'll rearrange my calendar. I'll be available. You hang up and you're like, happy dance. I'm going, you know, they're interviewing me. We're so excited because it's a company we want to work at. Compared to, you get a call from a random company that you must have applied for. You don't really remember it, but they called you. So you must have applied. And they're like, hey, this is from XYZ organization. And you're like, oh, you're pulling up your list. Like, what's the name of your company again? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you. Like, you're writing down the name. And then you get off the phone. You're like, oh my gosh, what is this company? And you look them up and you're like, oh gosh, okay, fine. Like, I'll go into the interview and just see what happens. It's an interview practice. I don't really want to work there because they don't have any flexibility and I really need to be home by 3 o'clock for my kids. And like, huge difference, huge. And guess what? It comes off when you go into the interview. It comes off. They can tell. And so if you are excited for that interview and want to work for this company and you've been dreaming of them, they're on your list, it's a totally different experience than you're going to an interview where you're like, I don't really care. Okay. So here is where here's the checklist, screenshot this, or take a picture of this. These are the items that you need to look up before you go into the interview. What do they do? What are their values? Are they in the news? You know, maybe they're in the news because, you know, they just had a huge layoff, but now, you know, they have to hire some positions that they've merged 3 positions into one. You know how that is. What are the trends there? What is the culture? What are the employees saying? Who are you interviewing with? You're going to go research them. So that's the checklist. Okay. Here are some other ways that you can do research. Their website will tell you a ton of information about them. So dig in, look at their shareholders, look at their board, look at what they care about, look at their resource groups, their blogs. This company has blogs. Look at all the types of jobs they have. See if there's, you know, career pathways. This company I love, and if you were here yesterday, I talked about this company also, but this company does debt consolidation and then collection. Not a company a lot of people want to work for, debt consolidation companies. They kind of are like, you know, the belief is that would be terrible. But the reality is this company's different and they help people completely get out of debt and they do it with them. They walk with them. And I love going into their building. It's in Tempe and they have this wall and on the wall, they have a countdown of all the people that they've helped. And then also the money that they've helped people get rid of, the debt that they've helped them get rid of. And it's very inspiring and there's testimonials and all this stuff. But the reason I'm telling you this is because normally a debt collection company or a debt consolidation company, you would think, okay, they're hiring very driven, hard salespeople that negotiate, or they're the ones that call me all hours of the day. Like, right? I don't want to work for that company. But I know the chief HR officer there, she's a friend of mine, and I've seen her build this organization up from, there was about 10 people when she joined, and now there's over 2,000. And the number one trait that they're looking for when they hire people is empathy. Shocking. Empathy. They're looking, and when I went to their website to just, because I was going to, do this, talk about them. When I went to their website, I am not joking you, that is the first thing that popped up. If you look on the left side of your screen towards the bottom, empathetic problem solvers wanted. They are not joking. They want people, when you tell them you're in $70,000 worth of debt and you feel like your world is exploding and you're never going to be able to get out of it, they want people to go, I hear you. Let's walk this together. And they walk it together. Not the person that's like, well, you shouldn't have gone shopping that day. Shouldn't have went on that cruise. Shouldn't have done that. No, they want to walk with you and walk you through the options, and they negotiate on your behalf. Like that's what I'm talking about. That's why you make your list. You do your research. You make your list of companies so that when you go into that interview, you can nail it. When you say you want to work there, no, you don't have to come up with an answer. It's in you. You're like, I've been all over your website. I've been looking at your social media. I love what you guys do. I love your diversity programs, or I love, what you did for they have like this employee fund. If an employee is going through a tough time, and they need some additional support, all the employees have chosen, the ones that want to, have chosen out of their paycheck, it goes to the employee fund. And so when an employee recently had a fire, when an employee had a hurricane flood their home, whatever, a single mom that's struggling, this employee fund gives that employee money to go do what they need to do. You see that and you're like, oh, that's amazing. A company does that. Like, you're able to actually talk about that in the interview. It's authentic. It's totally real. And you're not trying to make up something that sounded good out of an interview book. It is true. And that is how you build a chemistry connection. You know them. You don't have to come in, somebody said to me yesterday, well, but I'm introverted. It's really hard. But if you know the information and you care about it, you don't have to be outgoing. It just flows out of you. So YouTube is, you all know what YouTube is, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because people don't think about it when they're connecting on social media. So go subscribe to their YouTube, and whoever, your list of 20, the 20 companies, go subscribe to all of the social media they have. You can find the links usually right on their website, but subscribe to their social media so you can see what they're doing. But I love YouTube because it's all the videos. You can actually see the people and the things they're posting and the things they're doing. So make sure that that's how you can figure out what kind of traits. The other one that's really good is Google News. And so not just Google, but Google News. So when you go to Google, put in Google News so that page comes up, and then put in the name of the company you're looking for. And there's a whole bunch of information there about the company that is current. So it's a great way to find out what's going on. This one, and this is old now. I pulled this a couple months ago, but I did Lucid Motors. And so like you can see, this post here integrates nearly 250 robots for Gravity SUV manufacturing. If you are somebody that's in manufacturing and interested in that, like, you'd probably click on that and read more. So that's how you build that chemistry. And so the other way is LinkedIn is a great resource. Of course, it's one of the social media platforms, but it is a must for you to be on LinkedIn, so that not only you can learn about companies and apply for jobs, but so that you can connect with employees from that company or people that have worked for those companies previously. Also, before you go into your interview, Ask who you're interviewing with. If you ask who you're interviewing with, you can connect with them on LinkedIn prior to the interview. Completely acceptable and actually encouraged, and almost no one does it. So if you do it and you get brave and you do it, just put in the comments, I'm interviewing with you at Thursday at 1 o'clock, and I'm so excited. I have been watching your company for 2 months, and I was thrilled that there was an opportunity that matches my skill set. I can't wait to meet you on Thursday. Super simple message, but it already puts in their brain, this is somebody that cares about us. And so the likability factor goes up before you've even walked in the door. Anything you can do to kind of connect with them ahead of time is going to be a super big plus for you. All right, I want to go back just a couple slides here because I skipped something that, these are, hello, sorry. I want to go back and just touch on this one slide I skipped. I was kind of on a roll with that, and I didn't want to divert. So now you understand competence, character, and chemistry. That makes up the hiring cycle, or the culture match cycle. Those are the 3 things you need to make sure you're connecting on. Do you have the ability to do the job? Do you have the behavior traits and the character match for that company? And then, do they like you? And do you like them? And does it seem to be a fit? Okay, so those 3 things. Often, I will get people that will have been to a lot of interviews, even gotten to the end, and they're like, I get to this place and I can't move past it. I don't know what it is. I have the experience. They've obviously interviewed me, and I'm just not getting there. Well, a lot of times it's that you just haven't connected well enough. And that's the facts. I mean, people hire people they like. And so if you have the experience and you are showcasing your experience, are you being likable? Are you showing how much you want to work at that company? Like, really? Think through that. And so every time you go on an interview, I'm going to give you a list to analyze the interview. So you can really think through, did I showcase my best? And did I connect? Did I really learn more about them? So we'll talk about that. So before we get on to that, let's talk about the different types of interviews we have. So there is kind of the recruiter interviews, right? You know, you're getting you get a phone call and they're telling you, hey, I just want to get some background information from you today. That's a screening call. That's a recruiter interview. It is exceptionally important. I'm going to say it again. Exceptionally important that you treat that interview just like you would treat any other interview. I do a lot of hiring. I've done a lot of hiring over the years for companies. I have a business that I help people hire. And I will tell them, I'll always set it up. Hey, I'm just getting your background information today. I want to, get some information. And I kid you not, have had multiple people say to me, oh, you're just the recruiter. Do you know what happens to those people? They immediately go to the no. And you might be mad at me for saying that, but they go immediately to the no, because my clients don't want to hire anyone that treats anybody like that. That's the clients I have. Now, other clients might be different. But those are the clients I have, and I've had for many years. Every single client I've ever worked with, in fact, I probably can't name even an employer that wasn't a client. Like, I've worked with thousands of employers that would be like, oh yeah, keep moving forward with that interview. So they immediately go to the no. I'll finish. I'll get some background information, blah, blah, blah. But they're getting the no message. Okay. Your screening calls, your recruiter interviews, even if it's off the cuff, even if they're calling and you're sitting at the football field with your 10-year-old son, you're telling that recruiter, oh my gosh, I'm right now at the football field with my son. I can step away and take this call. And they're like, sometimes they'll be like, okay, I just need 5 minutes. And you're like, okay, no problem. And you're like, just give me 1 sec, and you get yourself together and you walk away. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Can I call you at a certain time? And you're like, yeah. And you tell them, you figure out a time. You treat that call just as important as anything else. I tell you, a lot of people, more than 50%, I bet. I don't know the number, but definitely, I'm just thinking through. I'm sure it's more than 50%. Lose the job here. Lose the job right here. Because they think, no big deal, it's just a recruiter. There's somebody I got to get around anyway. Don't do that. Take it serious. Now the next one then is like just it's either a phone or a virtual, like you could be on Zoom, you can be on the phone. And these are hard because especially on the phone, you can't see how the person is responding. But virtual, either one, phone or virtual, I recommend that you set that interview up just like you would set up any other one. So you're in a place that's quiet, you have a nice background, especially if it's, if it's Zoom, you have a nice background, you're dressed professionally, even on the phone. Because if you're dressed to interview while you're on the phone, you're going to feel ready to interview. You have your, your notes, you have all your stuff. Maybe you have another browser screen up, however you interview, like full on do the interview like you would do the interview. I have a really funny story. I just heard from someone recently that was attending one of my workshops. And he told me, he goes, I was on doing a Zoom interview. Oh gosh, I love this. This is so good. I hope all of you can do something like this if you get on a Zoom interview. But he was on a Zoom interview and it was scheduled for a couple days later. And so what he did is he actually took my advice. I was so proud of him. He had gone to LinkedIn. He found out who he was interviewing with because the calendar notice came through and it said, he was like, oh, so he jumps out to LinkedIn and he looks that person up. And I personally am a huge Big Ten football fan. Like I'm a diehard Ohio State Buckeye fan. And like, it's a big deal to me. It's a big deal for my husband's an Iowa guy. And so we're like, Big Ten, big deal. So what this guy did is he was a Big Ten guy also. I think he is Purdue. So he goes out and he gets on this guy's LinkedIn profile and, connects with them, but then also is researching him and sees that he was, and I'm gonna get the name of the team wrong, but like he was Purdue, but he found out the other guy was like Indiana or something. And so they're basically rivals. And so both in the Big Ten. So what this guy did, I love this so much, is he had a picture of Purdue playing football, like one of those big long ones, the football stadium. He had a picture of his team, which I think was Purdue, of course, on one side, but on the other side was whoever this guy's team was. So I think it might have been Indiana. So it was Purdue and Indiana playing each other. And what he did was he hung it right here. He hung it behind him. And he hung it behind him and he gets on the Zoom with the guy. And here's the thing. His team, Purdue, beat Indiana in that game. And so he gets on the Zoom call with the guy, with just like my pictures, but with this picture in the background. And before the interview started, the guy recognized it. And I don't know if you've ever seen these pictures, but like the football guys are little. It's like they're little. You can't really see. So he had to know that was like, he knew that was his team. And so that is how the interview started, without even like a word. And the guy, as soon as they got on, he just starts laughing. Because what's the guy know in his head? He's like, if I work with this guy, football season's going to be fun. And he didn't even say a word. He's like, I like this guy. He already knew he was competent. He already knew he had the skill set. He has an interview, his resume in front of him. What he didn't know is if he liked him. And before it even started, he liked him. So what can you do to make that impact? Make that impact with somebody. And yes, like Leroy says again, people hire people they like. So that's a great example of what is something unique and different you can do for a virtual interview. You can do, there's so much, but doing the research makes the difference. Then panel interviews, those are the ones that you're sitting at a table and then there's like 4 or 5 people, and that can happen over Zoom as well. But that's the one that kind of sometimes feels like you're in a spotlight and they're like asking you questions. And so that is the type of interview. And you really have to make sure that when someone asks you a question, that you're responding to that person, but not leaving out everybody else. So you can answer a question when somebody asks, and then you're starting to respond and you look right at that person, but then you also open it up and you kind of engage everybody else as well. So that's a really important thing to do on panel interviews. And I know they can be so intimidating, but if you bring your answers ready to go that you already know, it helps make it a lot less intimidating. So we're almost to that part. And then informal interviews, that's like, hey, can we meet for coffee? Hey, could we do a lunch? And here's the thing about informal interviews. They treat them just as you would an interview. Treat them just as you would an interview. In fact, if you're going to a lunch interview or somewhere like, I've seen them go at conferences, they'll go to the happy hour afterwards, or different things like that, where it seems informal, or you've been invited to an event that they're hosting, anything like that. Treat it like a real interview. And my recommendation, you can listen to me or not, my recommendation is if I am with a client or if I'm interviewing or something, I'm not drinking alcohol. I will get soda with lime. And so if you, and I love a glass of wine, totally. But if I'm doing something for work that's like, I need to be on my game, I'm not drinking, because often that's part of the interview, to see how you respond in casual situations. The last thing you want to do is have a couple drinks and then be like, not quite yourself. So treat them like real interviews. If you go to lunch, then maybe don't order spaghetti. You know what I mean? Like, order something that is not messy and that you can be talking. You can eat kind of quickly and you can answer questions and you can engage. So those are different types of interviews. The interview style that is the most popular is called behavioral interviews. And that is the type of interview that's like, tell me about a time. And so that's what we're going to focus on now. I'm sorry, I had these slides mixed up a little bit. That's what we're going to focus on now, because if you can craft your stories and craft your responses, then your responses will answer pretty much any interview questions that get asked of you. So what I mean by that, so we're going to craft some responses. And the first thing, let me step back here. The reason you craft your responses is because if you have a list of like 10 examples and you walk into an interview and they ask you a question, a behavioral question, like, tell me about a time when you had to make a decision quickly, but even though you didn't have all the pieces in place. Or tell me about a time when you had to have a hard conversation with somebody. Or tell me about a time when you had to coordinate an event or a project. Tell me about a time when you had a budget and you had to hit the budget. Whatever the tell me about a time was. If you have a list in front of you of your golden moments, or there's some other names for it, but a list of stories, think of them as stories, a list of stories in front of you, then those stories are going to be able to answer those questions you got asked. And so somebody will, tell you a time you had to hit a budget. I mean, there might be, you have 10 stories, and I bet you like 7 of those stories relate to that, hitting a budget in some capacity. So that's why instead of memorizing questions and trying to come up with answers to those questions, we're going to get rid of that model. You're going to flip it. You're going to go, what are my best things? What achievements, accomplishments do I have? What are my best things? And then you're going to write them out. And you're going to use those best things, those stories, for all of your interviews. It doesn't matter what interview you go on, because this happened in your life. You were key here, and you don't have to think about an answer. So we're going to first do golden moments. So golden moments are, maybe if you have access to your resume right now, pull it out, look at it, pull it up on your screen, pull it up on your phone, whatever. Or go jump over to your LinkedIn profile and take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Look at that and look at some of the accomplishments that are on there and go, oh, that was a good one. That was a good one. Man, I remember how hard that was, but man, we did a great job there. Or remember you were on the safety team as a manufacturing tech, and like you got to, when there was a emergency response, you were the one that went through the entire fab and had to check. And then you found this one machine that was still running and you had to turn it off, and that saved the company all of these problems. Remember that? What were like the really cool things you're looking through and you're like, oh man, that was cool. Maybe it wasn't part of my job, but that was cool. Remember when I put together that volunteer event and we were supposed to raise some money and we like doubled it? That was cool. What are those? What are those like, yes, I was so like I had that proud moment, or did I get an award? Like, what did you get an award for? What is this? Like, look around, look in your like certificates or your reviews. You can even go back to your reviews if you still have them. Like, what are some of the things that you did well? That's a golden moment. That is, so Sharon, you worked in a factory for a long time and don't have any stories. Sharon, you do. You do. Because here's the deal. Did you go to work every single day and not care and just stood there and did the job that was on the job description? And maybe it was putting a widget together and just stood there and did this all day long. Like, what did, look more, look out, look around. Like, what did your review say? Did your review say you showed up every single day? You didn't miss, even when it was hard? Like, what are the things you did to like be proud of? What are the things you did to be proud of? And when you like, if you've ever worked with any kind of career coach, resume writer, anything like that, anybody, these are the questions they're asking you. Okay, tell me about this job. What did you do? Okay, great. That's great what you did. What else did you do? What else? Like, what was the impact of your job? Like, even if you're in a factory and you're doing something, what is the impact of that? What was your piece in the puzzle, and how did it have effect on the end result? What was that? Write one down. Get out that paper and pen right now and write that down. And there are some questions to kind of get you going. Just looking through some of the responses. Thank you, Libra, for responding. Absolutely. So write it down. What was the situation? What was your job at the time or responsibility? And what was your role? What was your job in it? And then, what was kind of the problem that was trying to be solved, or what were you tasked with? And then what did you do to achieve that goal or that target or fix that problem? What was the result? What was the result of this? I had somebody once saying, like, they were in a factory setting and they were like, oh, my job was to fix the machine. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, yeah, that's what I did every day. I just fixed machines. I'm like, okay. He's like, nothing really, not a big deal. So I asked him, what would happen if that machine didn't get fixed? And he's like, oh my gosh, we wouldn't have been able to make any of the stuff we were making. So if you didn't have the experience and the knowledge and the information and the skills to fix that machine, it wouldn't have got fixed. The company would have lost a ton of money. He's like, oh yeah. And so talk about that. Talk about what you did to fix that and how you had to respond. Or maybe, and there were, in this case, this is true. There were times he didn't know how to fix it. So he had to go figure it out. He had to go do some research. He had to call somebody. He had to, network. He had to go figure out, how do I fix this? And so that became some of his golden moments, right? He had to have a really hard conversation with his lead manufacturing manager to go and talk to him and say, this machine is shut down. We cannot get the part in until, a couple days later. And, the director, a manufacturing manager, obviously was not happy. And so he had to just guide him through. They actually ended up figuring out a bridge fix for 3 days until that part came in. That's an example of a hard conversation. So he already knew the story. The machine went down and I had to try to fix it. He thought, no big deal. That's my job. That's what I do. But the reality is he was able to fix it. This particular story took 3 days to fully fix it, but he was able to figure out the bridge fix. And if they would have asked him, I don't know if they did, but if they would have asked him, tell me what time you had a hard conversation, that is one of the stories he could have used. So now that you are thinking through your golden moments, what did you learn about yourself or the job? And did you start doing anything differently? Those are really good, because if somebody asks you the question like, what's a time or what's a weakness, or what's a time you failed? And you can say, in this particular project, here's something that didn't go well. We messed up here, but here's what I learned, and here's what we went back to fix it. So I told you about my friend Jill that sent that message. That was not a very nice message, but immediately I went and, she called me, she apologized. We talked about how we were going to work better together. I asked what I was doing to make her feel that way about me. And she did the same. And so we came to an agreement how we were going to treat each other in the future so we could work together better. And it worked. So I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I had been, kind of driven over her, had been not super respectful to her a couple times. And so I had to learn that. And I learned that about myself. And so I could have used that as an example. It's not necessarily a shining moment. I wasn't super proud of that, but it's exactly the type of thing that a company would be looking for, because it's you, it's authentic, it's real, but you learned something about yourself. So, all right, I am going on and on about golden moments because I want to make sure that you've had time to write one down that you're proud of. So that is one process you can go through to get 10 examples, 10 golden moments. That's one process. We're going to go through another process. This one you may have heard of. This one's called the STAR method. There's also one called the CAR method, C-A-R, and challenge, action, result. So it kind of leaves out the task, or it combines rather the situation and task, because sometimes those two, or the task and action, can kind of go together. So the task kind of throws it off sometimes, but the STAR model is essentially very similar to golden moments, but everyone thinks a little bit differently. So I wanted to provide the different models. This one takes a situation, a challenge, a project, something, a situation that you were given, and it could be hard or not. It could be part of your job or not, but like, what was the situation and what was involved in that? And then the T is what results needed to happen. What needed to happen to get to the result at the end. So think about, what's the situation? What are the tasks? What are the things you had to do to move it along? What are the actual details of the actions you had to take and the goal to achieve the goal? So for example, let's say you were an event manager and you needed to plan a fundraiser. Part of your job, it's what you have to know, it's what you do. But this counts, it's part of your job. So the situation was, I had a fundraiser that I needed to do, but it wasn't part of our regular plan schedule. And so I only had 3 months to plan this fundraiser. And so what I did was, and you talk through, that was a situation and was going to happen in November, of course, right around the holidays. So I had to figure out a weekend or a date that was available because it's already every venue is packed out at the end of the year. And then here are the things, the results of the situation. I knew we needed to raise $50,000. And so instead of thinking, so what I did was, instead of doing the traditional fundraiser that takes a lot of lead time, a lot of vendors, instead what I did is we did a, let's see, what's that golf place called? Someone help me out, write that in the chat. The golf place that you hit the golf, Top Golf, thank you. Top Golf. I told you guys I've lost some words today. Top Golf. I was out late at that party. I think I wasn't drinking, but I was out late. So I need more sleep. But Top Golf. So instead of doing a huge fundraiser, what I did was called Top Golf, found out when they were available, let them know we were a fundraiser, and coordinated that. And then used social media, used our previous folks that have given, donors, and asked each of the big donors to pull together a team. And then we had a great night, everything was set up perfectly. We raised $70,000. My expenses were only $10,000. And so we hit the goal. Normally, our expenses for venue rental, food, all the stuff is around $35,000 or $40,000. Instead, I only had to spend $10,000. So I knew that I didn't need to go get as many high-level donors and ask our donors to do more. See, that's an example. And you just write that out. I want you to actually write it out so that you know, okay, yeah, that's right. Because if you write it out, you'll remember things that you didn't really remember before. And you could write that out. And then what you do is you just rehearse the story a couple times, like, oh yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened. And then when you go to the interview, all you have to bring in, you have your piece of paper, you have a notepad, totally good to bring into an interview, but you have the 10 stories written. So my first story is Top Golf fundraiser. That's all I have to say on my notepad. Top Golf fundraiser. And then I have 10 of those written down on my paper. And then many of the questions they ask can be answered just by this example. And then once you use this example on your paper, you do whatever you do. I cross it out so that I won't use it again. Or you can check mark it, whatever you like, but I just cross it out so I don't use that one again. I know that's already gone. I don't want to go back to it. Because oftentimes when we're in interviews, we get stuck on one example. It's like, it's the one thing we're super proud of that we never forget, and we keep going back to it and back to it and back to it. You are so much more than that one example. So cross it out, use the other ones. But this can apply to pretty much anything I told you, or I've already said around, tell me about a time you had to hit a budget. Tell me about a time you had a hard conversation. Remember when I had to go pitch this to the director and he was like, Top Golf, that's so lame. And you're like, no, here's why. Or you had to coordinate something. I mean, so many of your questions can be answered by this example and you don't even know the questions. It's so cool. I love this model. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to write 10, you're going to write out 10 star responses or golden moments, whatever you want to call them, whatever process you like. You're going to write out 10. And I am going to ask you to do this by Friday. So if you commit to that, if you're committing to having 10 examples done by Friday, in the chat, write yes right now that you're committing to having 10 examples written down either in your phone, on your computer, on a piece of paper. You're writing them out by Friday. Thank you, Tran, Armina, Diego, Guys, you're going to do this. Ida, Giselle, Armina, Rena, Rini, you are going to do this. Patricia, you are going to do this. It is going to change the way you interview. And you're going to do it now. You know why you're going to do it now? Because the day you get that phone call for that interview, you're not having to rush and try and prepare because you have your stories written down. You're like, oh my gosh, that Jessica, she was really intense. But dang, I'm glad I got my stories written down. Really, like I'm going to go prep a little bit more. I'm going to do some research, but I don't even have to think about, like, I got my stories written down. I just got to refresh. And you're right, Leslie, you will not do it if you don't do it now, because it will just get dropped and you'll be like, oh, you'll think about it and maybe you'll come up with 2 or 3 in your brain, but you'll have it done. You'll have it done, and you never have to fully prepare for an interview again because you've already have it done. You can do 10 interviews next week because you already have it done. Mary, Nicole, Leslie, thank you, all of you. By Friday. You know what I'd love even more? I've never said this before, but I would love even more is if we're connected on LinkedIn, on Friday, you send me your 10. I would love that. I would love that. Send me your 10. And it just gives you another piece of accountability. Just message me on LinkedIn, send me your 10. And I could even be like, I don't understand that one. Tell me more. You know, like, do it. Did I say this at the beginning? I don't know if I said this. You are not alone. You are not alone. People are here and want to help you. The world works a lot better when you're working. Our communities work better when we're working. When we have jobs, when we're confident, when we know what we're doing and we love it. Do the thing. Do the thing. I'm reading my notes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Emo. And here's the thing. Less than 5% of you will do it. Prove me wrong by Friday. Okay, I'm moving on. I'll go back to nice person here. Okay, so those are the behavioral, tell me about time, but I want to tell you about the other kinds of interview questions that you're going to get probably too. Tell me about yourself. And isn't that like awkward? Not awkward. It's like, tell me, what do you want to know? I have a family, 3 kids, you know, I've had a couple jobs, blah, blah. No, we're going to talk about that one because it is very specific and it will get asked all the time. And then the question about strengths and weaknesses, totally, that one's going to come up. And the why should we hire you? So those 3 questions will be often asked. And they're kind of outside of the, you know, typical behavioral interview responses. And so I do want to address them. I don't give a list of interview questions because it's the wrong approach. It's just the wrong approach. The right approach is having the stories because those, you know yourself and you're confident in those. But there are a couple things you do need to know and be prepared for. And it can be a version of the behavioral questions, but I do like you to spend a little bit of time on it. So, okay, to tell me about yourself. The reason they're doing this, the reason that this question comes up, and it may come up multiple times. It may come up in the recruiter screening call, and it may also come up at the beginning of every interview moving forward. There's a couple things going on there. At a lot of times in the first interview, it's just a verification that what you have said is true. Because guess what? People lie on their interview or on their resumes. Shocking, right? Not shocking. People lie on their resumes. Please don't ever lie on your resume. It'll come out eventually. So people lie on their resumes. So they're getting validation from you that your resume is correct. So what else you're going to bring into the interview besides your notepad with your 10 stories and your notepad you can take notes on, you're going to bring in multiple copies of your resume. And people are like, well, no, people like digital resumes. Yeah, they look at digital. But you know how nice it is to go into an interview if it's face-to-face, especially if it's face-to-face. And if somebody needs a copy of your resume, you have it and you can give it to them. Bring in multiple because you want to keep one that you're taking notes on, or that when you're telling me about yourself, you know, your resume is right there. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody say, I don't know if it says this on my resume, but I did this and this and this. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what if it says it? Like, it's on your resume, right? You have your resume, or they forget to print it or bring it. Like, have your resume so you know. And sometimes a company will be like, well, tell me about this job. And you're like, I forget the years, and you can go back to your resume and they're right there. The years are there. You're like, oh yeah, that was, 2013 and to 2015, and here's what was going on, and that's why that happened. So that gives you that. It helps them get the verification on your background, what you've done. But the reason it's asked over and over and over again outside of that is they want to just get to know you a little bit. They want to understand a little bit about who you are. That's why it's asked a lot at the beginning of the interview. Sometimes it's not, tell me about yourself. It's, hey, how are you doing? Tell me what's going on. It could be that casual start to the interview. All right. So what you want to do in this case is you do want to kind of give a quick, brief overview of your successes and experiences. Because one time I remember asking a candidate, hey, can you tell me about yourself? No, it was a Zoom call. No joke. 25 minutes later, he was still talking on the same question. I tried to stop him multiple times, but 25, guess how many more questions I asked? None. I was done. I was like exhausted. Brief, a minute or 2 to 3 minutes, whatever, like brief, and keep it focused on kind of a brief overview of successes and your experiences. Keep it job related as much as possible, unless they specifically ask something outside of that. And your strengths. What are your strengths? And then for fun, you can throw something fun in there, a hobby or, something like that. But don't go off on the family thing. I get asked a lot. I'll say, hey, just tell me about yourself. Give me an overview of your experience, like that. And they're like, well, how far do you want me to go back? From like high school when I graduated, and I'm talking to somebody that's has experience for 25 years. Not really. But if you can do it like that, and because it relates, then do it like that. That's fine. That's fine. Like I got my degree in this and I went right into this job. I was there for, 15 years and then move on. Like, don't belabor it unless you think it really, really relates to the job. Okay, so here are some examples, and you feel free to screenshot this also. You are going to get the link to the playback, so you can come back and watch this recording at any time. But here is some good examples. And I'm going to just set for a second and let you read this. I want you to actually have examples of some things that would be really cool for you, kind of an outline, and you can screenshot this and then you can take it and make it yours. I like this one because even though it goes way back for this candidate, starts when she was a kid, but that's a connection to the job for her. She's loved design all the way from when her parents were remodeling houses. So that's where she started dreaming about being an interior designer. That says, I'm in it for more than the job. This is a calling I have. This is something I'm going to do. It's obvious she's going to do such a great job at this role because it's in her. It's not something that she created this. You want to write out tell me about yourself, but it doesn't have to be word for word because it's just going to come out of her because she knows who she is and what she's about. That's why we're going to go back to the 20 companies. That's why you focus. You focus because then when they ask you stuff, you're like, here it is. Now, if she's interviewing for a job that's not interior design, that's maybe marketing, then she'll have to change this up a little bit. This can still be true, that, she's been passionate about this kind of work. And so then maybe she launched a social media account to be able to market them, or, she can modify this, and you will want to modify it based on the job that you are interviewing for. So writing it out is really good so that in the future you can just modify it for the company. Again, it's preparing. Here's another one. that you can read through for a sec. And it's talking about customer service. I have a daughter, right? My middle daughter, my oldest son is 25 and he is a chemical engineer. He works like East Coast, Charleston, which awesome. If you've never been to Charleston, oh my gosh, it's a great place to live. But she is almost 18 and she's tried a couple, you know, the typical like McDonald's. She's worked there. She worked at Foot Locker and, you know, those jobs were fine. But she didn't love them. And she just became a hostess at a restaurant here in the Phoenix area called Grimaldi's. It's a pizza place. And she loves it. And she loves it because she loves engaging with the people. They're excited to be there. They're going to dinner. She gets to see them. She gets to talk to them while they're having fun and like going to dinner. And she's really good at customer service. And then she gets tipped out at the end of the night. And so she, you know, money is a priority to her and people are a priority to her. And so she's learning this about herself. She's young, obviously she's only 18. And so this will, I think, eventually she'll be able to look back at this just like this gal and say, oh, when I was a hostess is when I realized how much I really like this kind of environment. It might not be a restaurant in the future. It will be something else, but she'll be able to relate to it. So think about that. That's how you tell me about yourself. Okay, now, so write that on your paper. That's an action item you want to take, is write out, tell me about yourself. Now, the next one here is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? These are probably everyone's favorite question. People hate this question, especially the weaknesses one. Sorry, I had to adjust something here. People hate this question. And so prepare yourself for it. Because it's, again, but here's the thing. I want to put it out there as not only I want you to prepare for it, but I want you to use this question kind of as an example of how to use your stories, even though it's not a typical behavioral question. So again, this one could be just getting to know you. And they're evaluating, can you communicate, you know, a hard thing, a strength, but a weakness. But this is really what it's about. Are you self-aware? Do you know yourself? So, sorry, I've been losing my voice the last 2 days. So, are you self-aware? Do you know yourself? And so what you can do is go back to the behavioral assessment I talked about earlier. Take one of those. If you're not sure, you can take one of those behavioral assessments and it will tell you. It will tell you, you are really strong at this. You are a creative problem solver. You are a detailed organizer. It will give you strengths. And it will also say, these are the gaps or the weaknesses. So it will give you this information if you aren't sure. But what you can do is, when you answer a question like that, instead of just saying, oh, I'm a really creative problem solver. Instead, what you do is you say, you look at your stories and you say, I'm a creative problem solver. Like this project that we had, we just did not know how we were going to solve this issue. And so what I did was I just went and started talking to people and getting their thoughts and ideas. And so this is what we did. This was the problem. Here are the actions I took, talked to all these people. And then I laid out a plan and then we executed on it and were able to fix the issue. And, you know, we created this new product, or we were able to reduce the time that was down on the line, or whatever the example is. But you use your creative problem solving skills. So you went and talked to a whole bunch of people about the issue, and then you took all the content everybody gave you and kind of put it into this, you know, your brain, and came out with a creative problem solver. You solved a problem, but it was creative because you went and talked to a whole bunch of people. That's how you get your creative juices going. That's how you come up with things that other people can't, if that's your strength, if that's your skill. So don't just say the skill, tell the skill, show the example of the skill. And then same with weakness. So have used, if somebody says, what's your weakness? I could go back to my Jill story. I've told you guys a couple of times, and say, I didn't realize that I was kind of being really driven on the task, and I wasn't slowing down to build the relational equity. And so that, which is typical of my style. If you understand the disc, I'm a very high D and a secondary I, and those people are like drivers, don't mind having hard conversations, will say things that are a little like, but we miss some of the relational stuff. And so I know that about myself now. And here is what I've done. I make sure when I'm launching a team that I do spend one-on-one time with people, or as a leader, that I do have weekly one-on-ones and I get to know people. I care about them. I do genuinely care, but because I'm a driver to get things accomplished, I miss that piece. And so show how you've overcome the weakness. That's what's important in those two questions. So not just having the strength, or not just having the answer, but what did you do about it? So here's just some examples of strengths that you might want to use. Again, it's the assessments you can use, but here's a list of some as well. If any of you are AI people, if you like ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT to actually take the job description, copy it, drop it into ChatGPT, and say, in my interview, I'll be asked about strengths. Is there a couple strengths based on this job description that would go over really well? And the ChatGPT will tell you, and pick one. You're like, yeah, I actually am really good at that. And then because you're thinking ahead and you're preparing, you're thinking ahead, and you can pick one and then create a story out of it. Here's the strength. This is just a template in case you need it. Here's the strength. Here's what I learned, or how you developed it. And here's the impact. And use one of those stories to show the impact. And so there's an example below on a response somebody had. So I'll give you just a sec to read through that. And what I want you to do is, on the paper that you've been writing on, I want you to write down one strength that you have. Just write down the strength right now. And now think through that strength that you just wrote down. How have you shown that? You can use this model right here if you like. But how have you shown that before? Either in your job, in volunteer experience. Maybe you're going into the workforce for the first time in many years because you were a stay-at-home mom or dad. But you had things while you were a stay-at-home mom or dad that you had to do, that you did. Maybe you volunteered for your kids something, PTA, fundraiser, all the things that us parents that can't do that are so grateful that you do. What are some of the things? Write that strength down. Write it down and kind of pull together a response here. I'm just going to give you one more minute. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to let you work on that. I'm going to answer a question in the chat. Leroy, this is a great question. So a lot of employers will have you, as you're applying, take an assessment, and it'll showcase these strengths and weaknesses. And actually, this is true. A lot of employers do this. We are seeing a trend in the market right now of this decreasing, because there have been some lawsuits and around this practice for just saying that it's a discriminatory practice, even if it's not. but because it is perceived, and maybe it is for some, but it's perceived that there's discrimination happening because of these assessments. Now, most of the assessments are built, so there's not. It's actually evaluating strengths and weaknesses. But so I have seen starting some of this to decline, or some of them are just getting revamped to look different and ask different questions. However, the question was, do you suggest that the questions, strengths and weaknesses, should align to some degree with these assessments? So I think it's smart to have them align. I do recommend that you all go out, pull your old assessments, take the new ones, and see what it says. Because here's the thing, this assessment is basing the results on the answers you're giving it, not on any preconceived notions. Okay, this is an example. I have asked the question to people, I've asked this question, what are your strengths, and I have had people say to me, I am such a detail-oriented person. And no example, just I'm detail-oriented. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because there's 7 misspellings on your resume. I went out and looked at your LinkedIn profile and you don't know how to write a sentence. I wouldn't necessarily say that in an interview. I mean, you all would be like, oh my gosh, I would hate to interview with her. I'm not that bad, but like, no, you're not. Not if you're misspelling words and your emails, they're coming through and the grammar's not right and they're not structured, or you're just responding from your phone and you're saying yes, and you're not giving you are not detail oriented. Because I tell you, if the people that I know that are detail oriented they do not hit send on that email until it is perfect. They do not submit their resume until they've shown it to 5 people and combed through that thing 75 times. If you're detail oriented, you know this is true. So unless you are really, really, really detail oriented, never say that. I don't even care if that's what's in the job description. Never say that unless it is really your strength. So that's why, Leroy, that's why I love the assessments, because they will give you the truth. Not the truth you think, the actual truth based on the information you put into the assessment. Okay, so get your strengths down. In the chat, please type in, you don't have to type in the whole thing, just type in what the strength is that you've worked on. What is the strength that you've worked on that you have? Take a moment to give yourself some props here. What is the strength? Drop it in the chat so we can see. Oh, I love that. Great, you guys. Resilience, empathy, problem solving, absolutely. So just make sure you guys dive into these strengths and write them out. Spoken empathy, awesome. I love empathetic people. I do, because I don't have it. And I love my friends that do. They mean so much to me. And the people that work for me, our team, some of our team have some of the most empathetic people I've ever met. And I'm so grateful for them because they can fix my communication sometimes when it's not real empathetic. Oh, I love that one, Tran. Ability to prioritize projects. Yes. Problem solving. Good. That's a great example, Hooping. Good. Okay. So weakness. Now let's talk about the part that's not as great. And sometimes this is really hard for us to come up with. So if you look at the left side of the screen, I'm not going to make you write this one out on the chat, but I want you to make sure you have it written out. So take a look. If you're having trouble, just take a look at the left side of your screen and think, what is one weakness that I have? And write that down on your paper. First step, just think, what is one weakness? Where have I dropped the ball? What have I done that isn't great? Where have I, crossed a boundary? Where have I done something that wasn't, when was somebody really mad at me and I didn't even know? What is it? Write it down. What's that time I sent that email to 75 people and I forgot to attach the darn attachment because I was going too fast. Like, what is the thing that is your weakness? And then what you're going to do is write it out, but you need to start with basically how you have overcome it. Because what this does is it shows you have a high IQ, EQ, emotional quotient. Debbie, yes, Sharon. Debbie, I think that's so interesting. I hate to ask for help. Man, that's actually pretty deep if you take some time to really think through that. If you've never, I'm sure you have, but if you've never thought through that, like, why? I'm gonna get that hat off, but think through that. Spend some time thinking through that. But she hates to ask for help. And so my guess, Debbie, I don't know this, but my guess is, so therefore you try to control all the stuff. You try to do it yourself, which therefore may lead to, when you're working, completely being overwhelmed because you're doing it all. But showing anyone else how to do it is so much work. You just rather do it yourself, and then you know it's right. Okay? I don't know if that's your story. I don't know if that's true, but that often happens with people who are like, I just want to do it myself. So you take that and you say, I really don't like to ask for help because I feel like, or I have learned, or I know, or let's see, I really don't like to ask for help, but I've learned that I don't like to ask for help because I just know if I can do it, I know it's done right. But I also, what I've learned through this is that my impact does not grow because I can only do so much. So what I've been able to do is, as I'm working, I've learned how to kind of mentor and train people over a period of time instead of just handing something off. Or if I've had to leave a job, I made sure that I put together a really, really strong guide on how the next person could do the job. And then I also give them my personal cell phone number in case they needed to text me, because I just want to leave well. Like, awesome. That's a great response. Because here is what I struggle with. We all have them. We all have struggles. Here's what I struggle with. I tell people the only person, in my opinion, that was ever perfect in the whole world was a guy named Jesus, and he's not available to hire. So what is your weakness? We all have them. And then call it out and say what you've learned and how you're doing it differently. All right. Okay. So finish writing out whatever it is, your weakness, and kind of what you've learned about yourself. I want you to write this one out. Strength and a weakness. And also tell me about yourself. Those are the three I want you to write out. And I don't want you to do it just to have another task to do. I want you to do it because it will matter. It will matter in your interviews. But not only that, you guys, if you write these out and you are at an event, you're networking, or you're out at your kid's soccer game, or you're at a friend's, we're coming up to holiday season. You're at a friend's party, Christmas party, you trick-or-treating. What, tomorrow night? Tomorrow night's trick-or-treat. You're going to see all your neighbors for the only time you see them all year. You're going to see them tomorrow night. And you guys are going to be talking and be like, what you been up to? And you'll be like, man, I'm looking for a job. It's really hard. And they're like, oh, really? I'm so sorry. You're like, yeah, but this is what I know about myself. Yeah, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And, I've been looking at these different places, and they're like, so tell me, what are you kind of looking for? And you'll be able to say, well, this is a little bit about, what I've been looking through. These are the companies that some of the companies I'm really interested in. This is the skill sets and the kind of the strengths and weaknesses I have. And or the strengths, you wouldn't say any weaknesses, but the strengths I have, this little bit about me. And these are the kind of things. And that person might say, oh, my neighbor works at Boeing. I would love to do an introduction. Or, oh my gosh, my company is actually hiring a project manager. Would you be interested? Like, you don't know where this is going to come up. And it's really hard to plan it because you're not going to a holiday party for a job, but it comes as part of the conversation. And if you write these out, you already have thoughts in your head about where you're going, what you're looking for, who you are, what you've done, and it's easy. Okay, so I'm just jumping over here. I'll finish writing that out. Yes, I'm just reading your notes here. Okay, now you have the last one. Why should we hire you? Now, this one is the one that is very job specific. Of course, strengths and weaknesses, they can be, of course, but not as the main focus. Like, you know your strength and you can talk about a story on how you got through that strength. This one is very, very specific to the company. So why should we hire you? This question is also, why should we hire you and why do you want to work here? Those are the same question, essentially. A little tweak, but basically the same question. So the goal for the company is, do you know the value and the qualifications and the skills that you bring, and do they match? Can you communicate? And then, are you really motivated to work here, or is this just like a step for you? And here's the thing, you guys, even if this is just a step, even if this is just a step, or it's like a gap job until you land the real exciting thing you're looking for, you still can have a reason for being there. And you can still have done the research to understand that it's a good match for you. So oftentimes we hear things like, I'm overqualified. That can often mean we're moving on because that person will be gone in 6 months. They're not going to stay here. When you're screaming at the top of your lungs going, I don't want that big fancy job anymore. I want to do this. I want to do this. I don't want the responsibilities. I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I don't want to. You can't say that to them, but you can communicate your motivators on this job. Why do you want this job? And so your responses should be around how you align with the company, their culture, their mission. How you can, think about your skills. How are they the match to the job? And then of course, you're tying in what you know about the company. Listen, it is okay if you're going for a job like a government position and you say, I really want to support our local government and I love the benefits of the organization. I love the ability to have a identified career pathway and the different options that are available. And I love that we get to support our neighbors. Like, it's okay to say that. It doesn't have to be some pie in the sky, like you're doing this, you're solving world hunger, you're helping feed the homeless. And it's just like, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just what it is. And they're like, great. That works for us. We just want to know that you want to be here. So, that's another one you're going to write out. Who are you? Strength, weakness, and why should we hire you? So you have 10 stories to write out by Friday. And then you need to answer these 4 questions and you need to write them out. So 14 total responses that you need to write out. It's homework. And those of you that do it, it's going to make a huge difference. It's not going to be all of you that's going to do it. But I promise those of you that do it, it's going to make a huge difference. Okay. All right. So let's talk about behavioral interviewing questions a little bit. These are the ones. Remember, we've built out the stories. You've written them out. You have that done. But this is what they are. And this is why they're used. They are the most widespread used for interviews. They are legally defensible, which is why they're one of the reasons they're the most widespread. What that means is, let's say you're interviewing and for a job, and one of the candidates that has interviewed for the job decides that they feel like they weren't treated fairly. And so they have decided to file a lawsuit against the company because they don't have fair hiring practices. Behavioral interviews is they ask, typically the way it's supposed to be done, not every company does this, but this is the way it's supposed to be done. And for the most part, they try to follow it. Most companies I've talked to try to follow this. They ask the same questions to everybody, and they're behavioral questions. And then they rate you on a scale 1 to 10, 1 to 5, whatever. They rate you. They document your answer. They rate you. And then after they do all the interviews, they go in a room, all the interviewers or a virtual room, and they talk about the candidates, the strengths, the weaknesses, the scores. And so they say, this person scored the highest. Is everyone on board with hiring this person? And this guy over here was like, no, they're number 3, but they were my favorite because of this. So like this negotiation is happening, okay, in the rooms. I know some of you have hired. It looks something like this. Then they end up hiring the second candidate. You were the lead candidate. They end up hiring the second candidate, even though you scored the highest. So this person gets hired after all the negotiation, and they get hired even if they scored a little bit less, but they get hired. Who knows why? It could totally be chemistry. But if something happens where somebody says that was not a legal, fair hiring practice, they have all the interview notes and they can show them everyone's ranked and rated, and even showing that the number 2 scored candidate got the job, they have the proof as to why, and whoever is doing the lawsuit, it shows why they didn't get the job. So the notes are there. So it's legally defensible. As long as everybody was asked the same questions, ranked and rated, and then the notes are there as to why somebody was hired or not, it's really hard to get around that. Also, this is another reason, past performance. And if you've like let go of me, if your brain is wondering right now, lock and load, look, come here, come back. Your interview answers, those 10 stories, are based on past performance. To a company, past performance is an indicator to them on your future success. Let me say it again. Your past performance, the 10 stories, your past performance is an indicator to the company on your future success. You've done the job, a version of the job before. Oh, you can totally do this. That's what they're seeing. So if you ever answer an interview question like this, well, if I had to have a hard conversation with somebody, this is what I would do. I would go maybe ask them to coffee, and then, I don't know, maybe just talk to them about it. And, I'd buy the coffee, and then we talk, and I, ask them what's going on. And then, we would be fine. Never answer a question like that. Never. And I would say it's like 60 to 70% of the way people interview. So you've probably done it. I'm not mad at you. You've probably done it. I've done it. We've all done it. What I mean by that is never say, this is what I would do. You have, even write that down on your paper going in, because if you start to say that, stop. Instead, when they say, tell me about, or what would you do if you had to have a hard conversation, even if they ask the question that way? You're like, oh, and you take your notes and you look down and you're like, oh man, I had to do this Top Golf fundraiser and I had 3 months to do it when normally it's on our calendar. And so annually I know, but I knew there was just no way we could pull it off in 3 months to get the dollar amount we needed. So I had to go pitch to our director, the executive director, a new program, something they'd never done before. I went to pitch it and he thought I was crazy. And so I showed him and I just kind of softened it a little bit. And I showed him like the budget and the numbers. And then he was like, we got through it. I had to go talk to him twice because he wasn't real sure. He had some questions. So then I went back and he was like, okay, I'm on board. What that just did, instead of saying, oh, I went to coffee with somebody and got over what we were dealing with. No, it showed in a business context exactly what you would do. And the interviewer that's talking to you just put in their brain like, oh, I could totally see them doing that. It may not even be anything like the job you're doing, but then in their brain, they're like, if this person's struggling with something, if they need to have a hard conversation, they know how to handle themselves. Awesome. Check. You get a 5 out of 5. Moving to the next question. So get rid of the answer. Here's what I would do. Please. It's not good. And use actual examples. If you see yourself getting caught up in that, and if you start to say something like, well, I think I would, just stop the sentence. And you're like, you know what? No, here's what I have done in that situation, and give the example. All right. Behavioral interview questions can be asked in a one-on-one, in a panel, in a group, teams. It can be asked in any context. And it is definitely the most fair type of conversation or interview question. All right, so here are some questions, just some examples. Again, I'm not asking you to memorize these. I just want to give you some examples of questions that are going to be asked by you. Could be asked. Again, please do not go buy a book of 100, 200, 300 interview questions, or go out to Google and if you do that, don't memorize them. Just kind of get an idea of the type of questions that could be asked. You could even test yourself and say, all right, let's see. Let's pick the second one. Tell me about a time when you prevented unfair or inappropriate behavior by your peers. And you're looking down your list and you're like, oh man, whew, I remember that one. And we were giving away awards and picking names, and they really wanted to give this one person the award, but I knew we didn't just raffle that person off like we were supposed to. And so I just took them off to the side and was saying, hey, we said we were going to do a raffle. I really think we should do the raffle. And so instead, I went ahead and picked from the raffle, so like that, you may not have prepped that, but you look at that example you had and you look at that project or that team or that event and you're like, oh yeah, I did have a hard thing happen there. So these questions, when they ask the questions, it'll start to trigger the answer when you're looking down through your list. I mean, this one, give me an example of a time when you had to deal with strict deadlines or time demands. I didn't know I was going to make up this Top Golf fundraiser. I mean, you guys even saw, I didn't even remember the name of the place. That's an example of that question. Give me an example of a time we had to deal with strict deadlines. I would be like, totally that Top Golf fundraiser. 3 months instead of 12 to plan this thing. So think through that, or think through your answers, because it will change your interview. It will change the way you interview. And you won't be like trying to think like it's running in the back of your brain. It'll be real. You'll look down and you'll be able to passionately, if you want to, but like really be able to get into your story and explain it. And it's your story, because you've written it out. Here's something a lot of people deal with, is not going to be a super long rambling story. It's going to be the story. And you know the story, you know the project, and you know the impact. And you can tell that story in 2 to 3 minutes. And so you don't even have to worry about rambling anymore. In fact, another thing I encourage you to do with notes is when they're asking you the question, write the question down. I always do that. Write the question down, because so many of us deal with going back to rambling and like, what did they ask me? I can't even remember what they asked me. But like, if you write the question down, then you can make sure that you pick a story that matches that question, and that you put the period on it and stop talking when you're done and you've answered the question. So all of that process happens in like 3 seconds, right? You write it down and then you're like, okay, which question do I answer? And then you make sure you answer it. But like the process on picking the story happens in a couple seconds. It's not, you'll get used to this. And that's why I want all of you to connect to each other, and I want you to follow up, especially those of you that take this seriously and get the 10 stories done. Because if you get the 10 stories done and then you follow up with someone from class, say, hey, could we jump on a call for a half hour and you ask me some questions and I'll ask you and I'll test to see if this works. Do it, because then you won't know what questions they're going to ask. I really encourage you to do that. Okay, so we already did this. I'm not going to go more into it, but your 10-star questions, your 10-star questions are, or actually we didn't write this fully out yet. We wrote the other 4 out, but your 10-star questions, answers, think through. And by Friday, don't forget, by Friday, write these out. Again, the situation, the task, the action, and the result. Write those out. Golden moments, star, and the other one is CAR, which basically is challenge, action, result. It combines a couple of them. Write out the 10. Okay. All right. So let's talk about at the interview as we are wrapping this thing up today. What to bring. Here's the list. Screenshot this or take a picture of this. Here is the list of what to bring. You are going to dress to impress, but that does not mean a 3-piece suit. What it means is figure out what they look like they wear at work. So that can be done through social media. There's lots of different ways you can kind of see, what a typical dress style is. So figure out what kind of they wear. Is it a manufacturing facility and they wear jeans? Like, what do they wear? And then I always tell people, dress one step above. So if they wear jeans, maybe throw on a pair of khakis and a nice shirt. If they wear business casual, then I would show up in a dress. It's like one step above, right? And so today I'm wearing a blouse and black kind of pants, jeans. And this would be probably for a lot of companies, business casual. I would wear the next interview, either like a dress, like suit, maybe a jacket, not like a formal jacket, but just, like just a nice jacket. And, or I would wear a dress. I do a lot of keynote speaking. And so the dress that I wear on stage is what I would probably wear to an interview. So think through one step above, bring multiple copies of your resume. If you have a cover letter, references, so you should prep your references ahead of time. Any interview notes, those are your stories, your 10 stories. That's what I mean by interview notes on a notepad. And then make sure you have the directions and you know how to get there, okay? That you loaded them up or you kind of looked online or looked ahead of time, or that your background, that everything is working in a virtual environment. And then review your notes, just review your stories, review the 4 answers that you have prepped, review all of that, review your resume, just, refresh. Bring a pen and paper, bring a notepad. A lot of times people will come in with nothing. It will help you taking notes. It will help you to scratch off things if you need to. And then turn off your cell phone, turn it off. Turn off your cell phone or leave it in the car. One or the other. Do not even just silence it, because what happens, sure enough, the person that you have on emergency is probably the person you talk to all the time, and they start sending you a text message, or start sending you, or they give you a call, or you have your phone programmed to, if they call 3 times, that it rings. What? We don't know. Whatever. Sometimes, like, oh my gosh, my notifications just started in the middle of this conversation and I don't have my notifications on. Turn it off. The other thing is, if your phone goes off during an interview, like it lights up, it's off, but it lights up, or it shakes, or you feel it in your back pocket, your brain goes to that. Even if it's not on, but you know you got to call, or like on your watch. I don't know if you guys have, any of you have Apple Watch. You can see notifications coming through. Take it off. Leave it in the car. Nothing to distract you from your focus on that interview and the person you're talking to. And then during your interview, remember that first impression we kind of talked about, like that likability factor. So when you go into the interview, do they shake your hand, look you in the eyes? Do the same. Shake their hand, look them in the eyes, smile, for heaven's sakes. We can all muster up a smile. Smile. And if they ask you a question, small talk, how was your weekend? How was your drive here? You know, what did you do today? Whatever, small talk, then respond to that and engage in the small talk. If they go right into, take a seat, let's get started, and right into the interview, do not try to small talk. We're kind of mimicking their style. So arrive a little early, but not too early, because if you're too early, if you're waiting for them and they know it, they're distracted, they feel bad, they're trying to wrap things up to get to you. A couple minutes early is great. And make sure you talk to everybody that you engage with during that. And I'm talking about, like, as you're walking into the building, as somebody holds the door for you and you're like, thank you. As whatever, the security guard that's in the little cart thing is driving past you, you're like, hi, have a good day. It matters. All of that could be part of the interview process. The admin that logs onto Zoom to get everything coordinated and ready before the interviewers come on. Engage with them if you're on the call already. Engage with everybody that comes into the process at all. Yeah, I said some of these already. The eye contact, the natural smile, so important. So important, because people know if they like you within a few seconds. They know. You know. You're like, oh my gosh, these people are so, yeah, I'm not going to be able to work here. They're intense. Do they ever smile? Not for me. You know really quickly. So you want to have that likability factor. Here are some questions for you to ask. So again, take a picture or a screenshot. And these are good questions to ask. You don't have to ask them, but you should ask a question or two at least every interview. I don't love generic questions like this. But if you're not sure, these are good go-tos. What I really love is questions about the company or about the department. Something that shows that you've done your homework. So let's see you're interviewing for a company, and maybe they just had a event to support justice impacted individuals. So justice impacted is like if people that have some type of record. And what they did is maybe they went and supported some type of expungement activity, which means helping people get the records expunged so they can get good jobs. Maybe that's important to you. And you saw that they did that and you want to know more. Like, hey, does your company regularly do these justice impacted days? Where did that come from? Why do you do that? Man, I've been working in, volunteering in a nonprofit that does a similar thing. Like, that's what I'm talking about. How can you engage? Or maybe you saw something on their LinkedIn profile. They had posted about servant leadership. And you're like, okay, I love that, servant leadership is a thing for you. And I saw it was on your LinkedIn profile. Can you tell me, is that your leadership style? Can you tell me more about that? So any way that you can show that you've done some work and homework and engage that way. Those are the type of questions to ask that are best. But these are the ones not to ask. And don't ask these. Now, the first one, something's happening in the market right now, and it has not hit, if you're here from Arizona, which I know a lot of you are, it hasn't hit Arizona yet, but many states have this, where on the job descriptions, they're required to show the salary. That is not true for Arizona companies right now, but my personal opinion is it's coming. It's going to happen because it's happening pretty nationally. And so this question, thank goodness, you will not have to ask as much. And the hard part is if you don't know, then how do you know if you continue on in the process? So what I would recommend you do is get on Glassdoor and PayScale. Glassdoor is like the one I would prefer, but they will help with some of those salary questions. So you can get an idea of what that company pays for that position. So that's a good one to use. You're going to need to have this conversation. So you will need to ask it, or they will ask you. You will need to ask it eventually, but please don't do it in the first interview, the screening interview. I wouldn't not do it there, and I would not do it in the first hiring manager interview. So don't do it there. And the reason is that I don't want you to do it there is I don't want them to think that that's what you care most about. Maybe it is, like, this is the job to feed your family, and that is what you care about. Fine, that could be true, but you don't want to put that as the main thing that you're talking to them for, because then they're like, well, they could just get a job anywhere making this amount of money. Doesn't matter if they're here, they don't really care. So that's what I would hold. Some people don't agree with me on that, and that's fine. But I would hold. I've just seen too many times where that becomes the main thing, and you don't show well. Now, if they ask you what salary you need, then obviously you can respond. Some people prefer to deflect, but I would respond. And I would say, that's such a hard question because I'm not really sure what what your company range is. But I can tell you that based on my experience and skill set and the market value, this is kind of the range I was looking for. And that's how I would do it if you're going to answer that question instead of deflecting. But if you don't answer it, and then you do get to the very end, and I've had this happen so many times, people that don't answer it, and you get to the very end and you're way off. You're like, okay, great. I just spent a month interviewing, and my salary needs are 110, and they're offering me 62. Like, where did I get that from that they would be able to meet my salary? So, I would respond to the question, and usually by about the second to third interview, if it hasn't come up, then you can say, hey, I have been through a couple interviews. I'm really interested in this company, and you lead with that. I'm really interested because, go back to the why do you want this job? Like whatever you wrote down. Because of this. And before we go any further, I just want to make sure that we're aligned on the salary side. Do you know what the salary range is here? And that's it. Put a period on it. That's all you have to say. Don't keep defending yourself. Don't keep talking. Just, yeah, I'm really interested, and I would love to find out what the range is on the salary. But wait on that question until about interview 2 or 3. The next one is around questions that have already been asked. And so what that means is when people are, or when you're having the interview, maybe one of the managers tells you a little bit about the job. Another one tells you you're doing multiple. Another one might tell you about the values of the company, the focus, where you're going, what they're focusing on. And it comes to the time when they're like, okay, do you have any questions? Any other questions to ask? And you have this question written on your paper. Whatever this question is, what are the mission and values? You know, how about what are your goals in the next 5 years? Maybe that's something you wrote down. And they already answered that, you know, second conversation of the interview. If you ask that question because you have it written down, it was already answered. And they're like, did they not hear us? Did they not pay attention? And so think before you ask a question, think through that. And any kind of aggressive, kind of high pressure, hey, I saw that you guys are selling stock at a pretty quick rate right now. What's that about? You know, or I saw you had a layoff of 100 people. Why? You can find that stuff out other ways. And the worst question probably of all time. So tell me about, what is this job anyway? I just applied for it. I don't really know. It happened. So I have to put it in there because it happens quite often. So those are questions not to ask. And actually, actually, the way I prefer you to do this is I prefer you to engage those questions throughout the interview. And so instead of just waiting to the end and asking all of them, if you can figure out a way to kind of just ask during it, if maybe someone's saying, hey, I'm going to be, you know, I'm the hiring manager, you're going to be reporting to me, and they ask you a question, you answer the question and you're like, then you can say, I would love to learn a little bit more. Can you tell me, like, what is your leadership style? I did look you up on LinkedIn and saw that, you know, you care about this stuff, but I would love to, do you mind? What's your leadership style? And it kind of makes it part of a conversation instead of feeling like you're being drilled. All right. I'm going to look over here to the questions I'm getting. What if they ask you an interview and it is not listed? That's where the research comes. It's out there somewhere. So if they ask you what salary you need, then come to the interview prepared. So what you should be doing as part of the research process before going into an interview is going out and researching that company. That actual salary for that job might not be out there. So instead, if you can't find that, then go to Pay Scale and other sites that have salary information for the type of job you're applying for in the area you're applying for. And so you research it that way. There's a lot of stuff on, thank you, Leroy. That's what I was just going to say. There's a lot of data and information out there. And Leroy just dropped a link to just some trends. You can also go to, and these links will be in your email that you get after, but you can also go to OEO, Arizona, if you're from Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity has some information there. If you're not from Arizona, you probably have some similar type of economic development group for the governor's office that does this type of work. And so ours is called OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity. ONET, you can, Department of Labor, you can start digging in there, that kind of stuff, but it's really difficult sometimes to find. You can ask ChatGPT. It's just true. You can ask ChatGPT, what do people make in Arizona that are project coordinators, that are event coordinators? And it'll give you an idea. Okay, it might not be perfect. All right. So we are wrapping up, you guys. A couple more things, and then we'll wrap up here. Couple key tips. Engage and show you want the job. Show them you want the job. And the way you show that is through knowing about the company as you go in. Be a little excited that you're there. You know, don't be like, this is just a job. And this is why I tell you, if you flip the switch, if you go and you really focus on these 10 or 20, these 20 companies, Even if you get a company that's not on your list, what I do know, if you've done the work here, is you're going to go research that company to see if they're a match before you actually walk in that interview. And then you will be able to have the enthusiasm that maybe you wouldn't have had before. Be confident. No one, lock and load right here. Again, I need you like with me. We're almost done. I know this is a long workshop. Look at me. You know you better than anyone else. So even if you're telling one of your stories and you don't get it exactly right, no one will know. You're not going to lie, but let's say you forget something. You don't talk about, you don't set the scene right. They will never know. Be confident in who you are because you've done good work and you're going to do good work again. Make sure you're engaged. And again, get that cell phone out of there because this is around the body language. You pick up your phone, you kind of look at it. It's totally distracting. So really be engaged. And lastly, if you start to get nervous, which a lot of us do, just take a minute. It's okay to catch your breath and then move forward. Okay, just catch your breath, relax, catch your breath, and then move forward with your interview. All right, to do the follow-up, this doesn't happen. If you're a follow-up person, good job. This is so rare to get a follow-up. The thing I told you earlier about connecting on LinkedIn before an interview never happens. This also almost never happens. Follow up. Email is appropriate. However, I prefer, and so do most hiring managers, LinkedIn. And the reason is because if you connect with them on LinkedIn and you put that note in there, then they have immediate viewing of your LinkedIn profile and anything that you've posted, anything that you've done. And you know how it is on social media. We think we know people, even though we don't. We're like, yeah, I've been watching her on social media. I totally know her. We don't, but that's the view. Same thing happens here. You send a LinkedIn connection request, they read your profile and they're like, oh yeah, I interviewed her. She was great. I forgot about that part. Oh yeah. You know what? We didn't hire her for this job, but I didn't know she did all this other stuff. I bet she'd be great for this other job we have coming up. I'm going to reach out to her. Like, you just don't know. So connect on LinkedIn. That's one of the best places. And then I want you, after the interview is over, to take a step back and ask these questions. So take a picture of this, screenshot it, whatever. What did I do well? And what, were my stories clear? Did I stumble over something? Was I prepared? Did I actually do what, that crazy blonde girl said I should do? Like, did I do it? Or did I, kind of rush into it? And did you build rapport? Were you likable? Did you like them? Did they like you? Like, analyze it. You're just going to learn from it. So screenshot that. All right. So this is what we went through today. You guys, that's a lot. I thank you for being here, for being, engaged. And thank you for talking in the chat. I'm telling you. So let's do something before, a couple things before. One, Bree, if you could drop in the link again for check-in. If you haven't done that, click on that link. Bree is going to drop in and make sure you are checked in. Again, you want to get the information after the day. So check in. The other thing that I want you to do, if you did not drop your LinkedIn URL, drop your LinkedIn URL in right now, and connect. We only have a couple minutes here, so click on those and connect. And that we do not save the chat; it goes away. This is a privacy issue. There are too many people out there that use information inappropriately, so we can't send out the chat. But click on the links so that you can connect. And now what I want you to do is take a look at all the stuff we talked about today. What is one thing you can do, you can commit to to do this week by Friday afternoon, or maybe it's Saturday or Sunday for you, whatever your week is. What is one thing you can do to make a huge step to be prepared for interviews? Maybe it's write out 10 stories and send Jessica a message on LinkedIn. I'm telling you guys, if you do that, you are so far above other people and it's going to make a big impact. Maybe it's connect with 10 new people on LinkedIn that I want to interview with, that work at a company I want to. Maybe it's, I'm going to write out 20 companies. I'm going to research and write out 20 companies. Maybe it's, I'm going to research my salary to see what I should be making and to see if that's worth it. Whatever it is. Let's see. What did anyone, thank you, Hooping. Write 10 plus 4 stories and confirm them with me. I just gonna research. We have some LinkedIn profiles. What are you gonna do by Friday or Sunday, whatever your week is, to be ready for interviews? Keep writing it down as we finish out this. Anyone else have comments? Because if you do this, guys, it's going to work. It's going to work. If you don't do the job, it's not going to work. Doing the same thing over and over again is not going to work. Do it with the way that we know that works. And this works. It's just different. It's different than most people think. That doesn't make it wrong. It actually makes it right because we know it works. Now, if you need additional support, if you are in Arizona, specifically Pinal County, here is a link, and Leroy has been on the call to the career services that are available to you. Now, Arizona at Work statewide has these in all our counties and cities. And so that they're available. I encourage you all, especially if you're in Arizona, to get and connect with AJC, Arizona Job Connection, and get into the system. Because as long as you're in the system, you're actually going to get some referrals for jobs. You're going to have the opportunity to get support. And so if you're in Pinal County, here is the information. We're so grateful, again, to Pinal County, Arizona at Work Pinal County, for offering up the ability to partner on these workshops and get them out to you guys. So thank you. Here are some of the ones coming up. So talking about salary, this is going to be a hot one. And this salary one does not happen very often. We do resume writing and interviewing and job search essentials every month, but this salary one is unique. And so block your calendar, sign up for Friday, November 8th, the salary negotiation. Brenda Mariah, who is an amazing career coach. She's also one of our keynote speakers at our regular events and a professional resume writer. Like, she's amazing. She is going to walk you through how to negotiate salary. And that starts with the research on how to find the salary. So she's going to deep dive on that. And then we have an in-person resume writing class by the wonderful Lori Norris. If you haven't met her yet or taken one of her workshops and you are in Arizona, get to that class. She's phenomenal. And then, and professional certified resume writer. She's so good. And then I'm doing a job search essentials in November. We have a couple other resume ones later in the year that are virtual. So these are the ones that are coming up. And then the organization I run is Career Connectors. And every month we do a content and coaching event. And what that is, it's a monthly free event that has a keynote speaker about a main topic that's relevant in the marketplace right now. And the one we're doing on November 7th is LinkedIn. So we'll do the content with our keynote speaker. And then we have breakout sessions where you can talk directly to a resume writer, a LinkedIn coach, an interview coach. You can talk to any of them and they'll help coach you and walk you through whatever questions you have. And tons of resources there. And then the December one is December 5th. We have Brad Turner Little. He is actually the president of all of the boards across the United States that have federal funding for job services. And so he knows the market really well. And, where are the jobs? He's going to tell us what's coming. And then I'm going to do just a short talk on creating your 2025 job search action plan. So those are our career content and coaching events. And then in the middle one is a on-site hiring event. If you're located in the Phoenix area that we're doing, we have 40 companies booked for this event and it's a career fair. a hiring event. And even if you think it won't apply to me, no jobs apply to me that are at career fairs, I bet you're wrong. And the reason I say that is because the main jobs that are often being marketed at these events are the high volume jobs. But all of those companies have a lot of different type of opportunities. And so they hire executives, they hire middle management staff, they hire entry level people. Most companies have all of those positions. And if you're a support services person, it pretty much doesn't matter the industry, because you know how to do finance, you know how to do HR, you know, whatever it is, the different function areas. So you can sign up for any of those on the Career Connectors website. And then if you have not filled out the survey that we talked about, or not survey, the check-in, we're just doing one, then go ahead and fill that out. And we did drop the link in on the chat as well. And so go ahead and do that. We are going to email you. Usually it's the same day. Sometimes it takes the next day, next morning, but this Zoom call will download. And then what you'll get after this is you'll get an interview guide with some additional resources, and you'll get the link to this survey, as well as the link to a lot of the things we talked about, including the link to the Arizona at Work Pinal County. And then this QR code, if you're interested, is the connection to me. So it has my LinkedIn, it has my website, it has, some other stuff if you'd like to connect to me. And so feel free to use that QR code. You can go directly to my website, jessicapiercespeaks.com as well, and connect with me. But really, LinkedIn is the place I love to connect with people. Most of us are utilizing LinkedIn in some capacity. So much stuff, you guys. I am going to, go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to open up for questions. We have just a couple minutes left. And I'm going to go, you can go ahead and unmute. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them right now. And I'm going to look over at the chat as well.